If we lose those players to the NBA, fantastic, great. We want to be a league that is a launching pad to the biggest and brightest lights in the game across the world. But the reality is, apart from that, if you're not playing in the NBA, we want you to be playing here in the NBL. And then the other part of that is the competition for high-level imports. So, particularly American guys who are on that NBA bubble, we want to be a really attractive league in terms of the quality of the competition, but also in terms of the style of play, all the different elements of the lifestyle here, as competitive as we can be commercially, of course. But I think one of the things that we have proven here in the NBL for a long period of time now is that we're a pathway to the association. So for young, up-and-coming players through the draft, the Next Stars program is a big part of that, but also for other oldest players that are on that NBA bubble. Maybe they've been grinding in the G League for a hot little minute and they're looking for another way to spread their wings and get to the league.
He is the general manager of Next Stars recruitment for the National Basketball League, the NBL. And he's also an analyst for the NBL for ESPN Australia and New Zealand. We have the pleasure in welcoming Liam Santamaria onto Hoopsology. Welcome, Liam.
Thanks, Justin. Thanks for having me on, and great to connect with you.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming on to the show. Our show covers basketball not only in America, but globally as well. Before we jump into Next Stars recruitment for the NBL and then the NBL as a league as a whole, we talk about basketball culture. We ask a lot of our guests this question, so take this any way you want it. What is your first or favorite basketball memory?
Oh, first or favorite? My first basketball memory is in the backyard. I'll be completely honest. I got two older brothers who were both playing the game, and I was that kind of 4 or 5-year-old that was trying to compete with their 10 or 7, 8-year-old brother in the backyard. So that's probably my first basketball memory. That was tough. That was physical, Justin, as you could imagine. My favorite basketball memory is probably Marvel Stadium here in Melbourne a few years ago when Patty Mills went crazy and the Boomers beat Team USA in an exhibition game here. Now, it wasn't LeBron and Steph and the 1A Team USA, but it was a big moment in Australian basketball, and being there that night with my wife, just kind of reflecting on the growth of the game here in Australia and worldwide, culminating in that moment. Probably my favorite, I would think.
Can you elaborate on that in terms of the basketball culture within Australia? As we talked about off air, I am an alumni of the University of New Mexico. We were chatting about Luke Longley and then some other players within the 2000s and the 2010s that Steve Alford recruited from Australia. So if you lived in New Mexico, a fan of the Lobos, you're very familiar with the connection between basketball and Australia. But I don't think a lot of fans really know about the culture within the country itself about the game. So can you elaborate on that just in terms of how the game has grown and kind of what's the link between just the game in Australia and then just the rest of the world as well, just in terms of that link?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I guess it starts with the fact that, we are a sport-loving country here in Australia. Generally you grow up in different parts of the country playing or participating, competing in one sport or another. So, whether that's swimming, cricket, Australian rules football, rugby, soccer, basketball, netball, there's just a lot of sport being watched. It's being played. It's just part of the culture. You grow up kind of cheering for your team in a number of different sports. And as a kid, through school and through club systems here in Australia, you generally play a lot of sport. And basketball, for a long period of time, has been one of, if not the highest participated sport here in Australia. So kids grow up playing the game. The fandom of NBA here in Australia is at a high level. It's not a huge population, but a big percentage of that population are basketball participants or fans. And then the growth of the game, I think we've done a really good job over here over a long period of time of developing young players to be high-level pros. So it's why our national team has always been really competitive at Olympic Games and at World Cups on the men and women's side. And it's why you see a lot of Australian players playing in the NBA and the WNBA over the years. And through your experience there, you know, in New Mexico, a lot of guys coming, excuse me, and girls coming through and playing high-level NCAA college basketball as well. So I think there's 72 males in NCAA Division One this upcoming season. I think it'll be that, if not more, in the women's side.
Wow.
So a lot of players playing at a high level. And, you know, I think a big element of that as well is the strength of our national leagues, the NBL and the WNBL. So I work here with the NBL in the Next Stars program. It's a very popular league. It's one of the best, highest quality domestic leagues around the world, and it's an attractive place for people to come and play. So local players, Australia and New Zealand, but you know, also internationals, Americans, because it's English speaking. It's a beautiful place to be, and it's a high level league.
Can you talk about where the NBL ranks in the hierarchy of just basketball culture globally? Like, where does it rank in terms of European leagues? Which kind of are you focused on competing with those leagues in terms of talent, or are you just focused in terms of what you guys are doing fundamentally? You're not worried about really anybody else happening globally, are you aware? I mean, let's face it, basketball is more of a global game now more than ever. There's plenty of great players everywhere, and I'm sure there's competition. There's tons of leagues. So, what is kind of the strategy in terms of how the NBL has grown over time, and then how it relates to Next Stars recruitment in terms of just attracting talent?
Yeah, well, you know, we like to think that it's one of the top domestic leagues around the world outside of the NBA. So, you know, obviously you have the Euro League, which is extremely high quality in Europe, which is, you know, across a number of different countries, the Euro Cup, a lot of those leagues. But, you know, you look at the Spanish ACB, the Italian Serie A, the Pro A in France, like there's a lot of really high quality leagues around the world. And we like to think that the NBL is very much one of that top echelon of leagues outside of the NBA. And, you know, I think that there is some inherent competition there. Certainly in the marketplace for players. We don't want to lose top Australian and New Zealand talent to Europe. If we lose those players to the NBA, fantastic, great. We want to be a league that is a launching pad to the biggest and brightest lights in the game across the world. But the reality is, apart from that, if you're not playing in the NBA, we want you to be playing here in the NBL. And then the other part of that is a competition for high level imports. So, you know, particularly American guys who are on that NBA bubble, you know, we want to be a really attractive league in terms of the quality of the competition, but also in terms of the style of play, all the different elements of the lifestyle here, as competitive as we can be commercially, of course. But I think one of the things that we have proven here in the NBL for a long period of time now is that we're a pathway to the association. So for young, up-and-coming players through the draft, the Next Stars program is a big part of that. But also for other oldest players that are on that NBA bubble. Maybe they've been grinding in the G League for a hot little minute and they're looking for another way to spread their wings and get to the league. So, you know, guys like Torrey Craig or Jay Sean Tate, these types of players have used this league as a launching pad to get themselves to the NBA.
Can you talk about just the history of the Next Stars recruitment program, just the formation of it, and then the evolution, and then what are the criteria of acquiring players just for that program as well?
Yeah, for sure. Well, there's a lot to unpack there. It started the genesis of the idea of the Next Stars program grew out of the recruitment by, you know, one of the great coaches in NBL history, Joey Wright, of a young five-star high school prospect, Terrence Ferguson, back in 2016. So you might know Terrence went on to be a first-round pick for the Oklahoma City Thunder. And he, instead of going to college, he took this as an alternative way to get to the NBA. And he came over as an import for Joey Wright's Adelaide 36ers. And what happened was, it was it was just a big boon for the league having a guy like that in the competition for that year. The place was buildings here was swarming with NBA scouts throughout the season. There was a real spotlight on that team and that the league as a result of having him here. And I think following from that, the idea was born. I know, the owner of the NBL, Larry Kestelman, the then commissioner of the league, Jeremy Lowliga, an influential agent in the space, Daniel Moldovan, all collectively put their minds together, came up with the idea to say, hey, let's do this more often. Let's bring in guys that are on this upward trajectory heading towards the NBA draft into the league. It's great for the competition. And there's a lot that's really attractive about it attractive about doing that for these players. So the Next Stars program developed out of that, a set of rules to say, let's do it in a really organized way. You don't have to use an import spot for a player like this. If they're a Next Stars player, they're an extra roster spot that you only can use on that type of player. If you don't have a Next Star, you're not using that spot, and maybe other teams are getting a competitive advantage on you. Their salary will be entirely outside the salary cap. So a few different ways to try and make it attractive for our teams to engage with those players and help launch them to the NBA, and do it in a really organized way where the league is itself partners in the program with those teams. So the first player within the program was Brian Bowen Jr., who was kind of slipping through the cracks a little bit of his college eligibility. And then we really kind of got put on the map by LaMelo Ball the following year. LaMelo Ball and RJ Hampton came into the league as Next Stars and captured the attention of really the world in terms of taking this as a pathway. LaMelo ends up being the third pick in the draft. RJ is a first-round pick. The following year, Josh Giddey, the top Australian player at the time, doesn't go to college, comes into the Next Stars program. He's the sixth pick in the draft. And since then, 11 Next Stars have been drafted, 6 in the first round, and it's proven itself to be a genuine pathway to the top of the NBA draft. So that's really how the program developed and how it kind of gathered some steam in those early years.
How do you make your program stand out in this day and age? There's just so much competition. I feel like in terms of options where players can be able to apply their trade on a professional level, I feel like there's more options more than ever, and that's due to just the evolution of technology. Fans are able to see the game in a more global way. But when there's overtime elite, when there's NIL, when there's just all these new things that are happening, what's going to make your program stand out in gaining those scouts and having them pick the Next Stars recruitment program over like an overtime elite or over a G League or just going to an American college like Duke or Kentucky? What are kind of those parameters that you have to make it more attractive to pick your program?
Yeah, it's a good question. So, you talk about the technology and the world getting smaller. The truth is that actually that helps the program because NBA scouts, it's very, very easy to track players who are playing here over the course of their season. Yes, we're a long way away. It's a long flight. You can't get around that. But you can watch these games in the NBL live broadcast into the US. Awkward times, you're often asleep, but when you wake up in the morning, you can load up Synergy and you can watch the games, and you can cut that tape. So guys are very heavily scouted when they're playing here. Then obviously with, social media and the internet, like any sort of highlight package, anything that they do here at a high level is very visible all around the world instantly. So that part really helps. The second part is, there's obviously G League Ignite came in as a competitor to the Next Stars program. That's come and gone. But you're right, the NIL landscape has really changed the environment for prospects who are coming through on their way to the draft. So what's different about our program? Well, if you come this way, you're going to be in a professional environment from day one. Now, that means a professional schedule. Day in, day out, you can dedicate your time to the developing of your body, the developing of your game, You can be in the weight room, you can be on the court, individual skill development, video analysis with your coaches, team practice. There's no limits to the amount of time you can spend on the day-to-day developing your game. You're also going to be in an environment with older guys, pros, guys, former NBA players, guys that are on that NBA bubble. And, it's an environment where iron sharpens iron. So I got better in the backyard as a youngster playing against my older brothers because I was forced to get up to that level very quickly. That's what happens with these young guys in this practice environment. Because they're supported by their teammates, but it's also very competitive. You're playing against older guys that are helping you to, develop your craft. And then when the bright lights come on, you get that opportunity to compete against pros in that game situation as well. So there's a lot about our league that's attractive from a lifestyle perspective. It's the Australian summer. It's a beautiful place to be. It's English speaking, high level coaching, high level teammates. So that's why a bunch of guys over the journey have chosen to go this pathway. Overtime Elite, I think they've done a great job over a period of time. Obviously, the Thompson twins made their way through that program straight to the draft and become really good NBA players. I'm not sure that players are necessarily choosing OTE rather than the Next Stars program. We've had Alex Sarr go from OTE through the Next Stars program to the second pick in the draft. We had Ethan Almanza take a similar route through G League Ignite as well. OTE tend to have sort of slightly younger guys in their program at the moment, and then those guys are going off to college or taking different pathways from there. But certainly the NIL landscape is the primary competition, or internationally decisions by guys in Europe to either stay at home, go to college, or come and play in the NBL.
What do fans get wrong in evaluating a high-level recruit? What are things that they should be paying attention to that is often ignored by mainstream media, do you think?
Just how young they are. That's the biggest thing. When you're a 17, 18-year-old playing in a league against 25, 26, 27-year-olds, it's hard to be highly productive. So what NBA teams and NBA scouts are looking for are all the different intangibles. How do they handle the challenge of that? And they're looking for flashes of potential. So I think one of the things maybe fans get wrong is looking at the raw numbers and saying, oh, you know what? He wasn't super productive. This guy over here is a way better player who was putting up bigger numbers. Well, he's 4 or 5 years older. So when Alex Sarr was in the league here as an 18-year-old, he averaged 9 and 4 and was the second pick in the draft, playing 18 minutes a game off the bench. Well, that makes sense. He was an 18-year-old in a tough, strong, competitive pro league. So a lot of times guys that are Next Stars and 18, 19-year-olds aren't going to come in here and put up massive numbers. But can they be productive? Can they continue to develop at a good rate? And can they flash their potential in this environment? And that's what NBA teams are looking for.
I'm curious, just within your evaluation of talent and then also the fans' perception of the game of basketball in Australia, I'm curious to contrast that to what's going on here in America, at least on the pro level. I don't think this is happening more on the collegiate level or high school, but at least on the NBA level, just in terms of a lot of criticism of, the 3-point shot, just in terms of kind of the game becoming stagnant. Do you experience those kind of criticisms within Australia? I'm just curious of the feedback, because I just feel like with Americans, we just seem to complain a lot and not really appreciate what is happening. There's so many great players, and yet it's usually tend to lean negative most of the time. So I'm just curious that on a professional level, what is yourself and your colleagues and fans, just in terms of how they're feeling about the game of basketball these days?
Yeah, I mean, I think your question is mainly around style of play and how attractive that is to watch. You certainly hear some of the guys who played the game a long time ago remembering what it was like then and comparing it to now. And, I do think that the difference in style of play is real from one part of the world to the other. Our league is something of a bit of a hybrid. So the NBA is long and athletic and quick. It's the fastest paced league in the world. It's very isolation, pick and roll heavy. You go into Europe, you look at the Euro League, and it's a little slower by pace of play, highly technical. Obviously, the rules are different. The lane's a little narrower. There's no defensive 3 seconds. There's a bigger emphasis, I think, on, getting in through multiple actions each offensive set, getting from one side to the other and shifting the defense and then executing in that type of way. It's also very, physical. So the way in which bigs play, say, in Europe is very different to the way they play in the NBA, where you need to step out and shoot it. You need to be a pick and roll lob threat. In the NBA, in the Europe, for example, there's more of your sort of old school big. They play out of the post a little bit more. There's a little bit more bumping and grinding. Our league is a bit of a hybrid. So yes, it's still strong and tough and physical, but it's also the fastest paced league in the world in terms of top level domestic competitions outside of that NBA system. So the NBA and the G League. So offensively, it's push the ball, pace and space, explore in the first 8 seconds, early punch screens and drag screens, see if you can get downhill and find, get to the rim or find guys open in the corner. But from there, okay, nothing early. Let's get from the first side to the second side and get through some action. So it's a little bit of a hybrid, but it's a style I think that guys enjoy playing because it's not slow, walk it up, look over at the coach and find out what play to run. If you play defense at a high level, the coaches here give you a lot of freedom to push the ball and make plays.
That's interesting. Do you see that being just a united front of having that style, or do you see maybe some other ideas being implemented in terms of maybe changing that just because some coaches they want to win, so maybe they'll want to upset the apple cart, kind of to speak of a term, just kind of do something a little bit different, like maybe use a European style in this faster paced league of the NBL. Do you see that to be the case over the years, or do you think it's pretty consistent all the time?
Yeah, no, for sure. It's a really good question because it does happen, right? Like not every NBL team is built the same. There's a real mix of different coaches within the NBL. So previously, there's a lot of Australian coaches, maybe some Americans who came over and made a home here, and became sort of like part Aussie and were coaching in the league. But now there's very few Australian or New Zealand head coaches in the league. So a lot of them are either American or European. So you got guys like Justin Tatum. Jason Tatum's dad is the reigning coach of the year and NBL championship winning coach, coaching one of the teams. You got a guy like Petteri Koponen from Finland, EuroLeague legend, really kind of developed his game and spent a long time in that European system. He's the head coach of one of the teams, the New Zealand Breakers. And so a bunch of different, a few Aussies, a few Americans, a few Europeans. So those teams tend to play a little bit different to each other. One of probably the best case studies is the Tasmania Jack Jumpers, which is a fun name. An expansion team from a few years ago that's been super successful over their first few years in this league. They won the championship in just their third year of competition. They're coached by Scott Roth, former NBA guy who's been in that NBA system for a long time, but also has spent a lot of time coaching around the world. And his team over the past few years has played with the slowest pace. And so while everyone else was zigging, he decided to zag, slow down, right? Yeah, get the ball through hands, lot of splits action, post, elbow catches. And they were more focused on executing in the last 6 to 8 seconds of the shot clock rather than the first. And they were super successful, slowed the pace down, made it a bit more of a grind. Their scores of their games were a little bit lower, but they were winning ball games, and their fans grew to really appreciate that style of play because they were winning games, getting to the finals, and ultimately hoisted the championship trophy. So yeah, that faster paced style is what exists around most of the league, but there's always going to be a coach here or there who says, all right, hey, let's do things a little bit differently.
No, that makes total sense. I'm curious from a technology perspective. We had a tech influencer. He's very popular and evaluating just Apple products, but he also covers sports and technology. And he covered a story within the NBA of using a technology that's tracking the stats of every single player within the league. Every movement that they make, every precise action that they proceed to do on not only practice but in a game. I'm just curious how technology has infiltrated its way in within the NBL as well as artificial intelligence. Is that something that is a main factor for the league in terms of just as a competition edge and used in terms of using technology? I'm just very curious. What is that like? Because I know the NBA has been very aggressive with that.
Yeah, I think more and more so is the sense that I get. Probably, I think somebody within that sort of team and club environment would be able to speak to that a little bit more specifically. But certainly, I think, definitely coaches, coaching staffs around the league are, needing to embrace the development in technology. Certainly, in terms of that tracking technology that you're talking about, how does it impact our style of play? Where can we find the most efficient play types, shots, to for us to focus our efforts at both ends of the floor. So for sure, that's something I think that is very quickly changing. It's a dynamic space, and my sense is that our teams here are really embracing that challenge, particularly from a coaching perspective and from a recruiting one as well.
In terms of recruitment, are there any untapped markets that, within the next few years, do you think they're going to become more of a factor globally that really fans are not paying attention to? It's so tough because I think the game has just expanded so rapidly globally. I'm just curious if there's any other places in the world that you think you might have an edge compared to other leagues and even fans that they might overlook it within the next few years.
Yeah, it's a good question. When the G League Ignite came into the mix as a bit of a response to what was happening here somewhat, those running the Next Stars program at the time, Jeremy Lowliger, the commissioner of the league, made a really smart pivot to focus a little bit more on, well, the Australian talent, but also those guys in Europe. So, for a couple of years there in particular, and really ever since, we've become a genuine pathway for those guys developing their game in Europe to take this route towards the NBA. So, Ousmane Dieng came this way, was a lottery pick, Rayan Rupert, Alex Sarr, a bunch of French guys that have utilized the program. But, I think one of the next spaces I think that's really going to be really interesting to watch and recruit out of is South America. So Central America, South America, the headline act or one of the headline acts in the Next Stars program right now is Karim Lopez out of Mexico, projected lottery pick in next year's draft. And, he's, a guy that played a little bit in Spain as part of his journey coming up through the system there in Europe, and then, is playing in this program now on his way towards the draft. I see a guy like Matias Vasquez, who recently committed to play at OTE after playing in Spain a little bit out of Brazil. I think that there's some good talent coming up through the system there in South America and Central America that are going to become high-level NBA players. And, it's a place that we're watching closely and, potentially looking to recruit out of more and more.
Final question for you. Where do you have the next 5 years of Next Stars mapped out? Like, where do you see yourselves going within just the recruitment process? What does that look like in terms of just the growth?
Yeah, well, our focus with the Next Stars program is on is on quality over quantity, right? So, when we don't need every prospect in the world taking this pathway, but we might be a great fit for certain guys. So that's sort of the main focus moving forward, is to continue to be, a great pathway for those that choose to take this route, so that others will explore it, uh, as they make their decisions moving forward. So we're always looking at different ways to expand the program. Is there scope for teams to have maybe multiple Next Stars? Is there scope in the league for a team that's particularly focused on Next Star development? We're always exploring these types of possibilities. But the key for us is to keep the main thing the main thing. So, make sure that, those guys that are coming into the program as a Next Star for a team, it works great for the player. It works great for the team. It works great for the league. They then go off to have a successful experience, and we launch their careers into the NBA, and with a sight towards others looking to follow suit.
Liam, thank you very much for the time. Truly appreciate it. Can you let our audience know where they can find you on social media, where they can, check out the future stars of the world of basketball globally, and also the NBL as well, and anything else you want our audience to be aware of?
For sure. Thanks, Justin. It's been great to chat. Don't worry about me. You can find me on X or on Instagram, those types of things. But if you want to track the Next Stars this season, if you want to track Karim Lopez and how he's going towards the upcoming draft, or Dash Daniels, who'll be in the league, Dyson Daniels' younger brother, playing for Melbourne United as a Next Star this season, Noah Kukuerg from France, or Malik Lewis from Trinidad and Tobago. Find the Next Stars social media platform. So at NBL Next Stars, follow the NBL at NBL on all your social media platforms, and you'll be able to track those guys and see how they're progressing as the next big things out of the program and heading towards the 2026 draft.
Fantastic. Thank you, Liam. Much appreciated.
Cheers. Good to chat.